Today on Commander Replay, we play the most evil Elder Dragon in the multiverse, Nicol Bolas. Can we turn Grimgrin Corpseborn, Sedris the Traitor King, and Yidris Maelstrom Wielder into slaves of Bolas? Find out next on Commander Replay. Time to make some slaves of Bolas.
Slaves of Bolas.
We're playing Nicol Bolas today, and our primary goal is to win this game by stealing other people's turns. Let's take a look at our starting hand. We've got a bunch of lands, and we've got a couple good cards, so we're gonna go ahead and keep this. Let's see who our opponents are. We're facing off against Grimgrin Corpseborn, is a 5/5 legendary zombie. Enters the battlefield tapped and doesn't untap during your untap step. You may sacrifice another creature to untap it and put a +1/+1 counter on it, and whenever Grimgrin attacks, destroy target creature defending player controls, then put a +1/+1 counter on it. We have Sedris, the Traitor King, gives all of his creatures in his graveyard unearth for the cost of 3. And we have Yidris, Maelstrom Wielder. And we, of course, are playing Nicol Bolas,
the most evil of all the Elder Dragons.
So our turn, we draw a Demonic Tutor. So in our hand, we have Demonic Tutor, Dimir Aqueduct, Ancient Tomb, Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth, Increasing Vengeance, Reliquary Tower, Slave of Bolas, and Bribery. We're just going to lead on this Urborg Tomb of Yawgmoth for now, and we'll F8 the turn. So this is a solid hand. This deck wants to make all of its land drops. We are playing a very unorthodox mana curve in this deck, where we have a ton of things at the really top end of the curve with a lot of cards around 8 mana. So we want to make every single land drop with this deck, and we want to draw more cards to make sure that we continually keep making our land drops, find acceleration, and then eventually find the combo cards that we're looking for. So right now I'm going to slap down this Voltaic Key, simply so we can play our Dimir Aqueduct, bounce the Urborg, and not have to discard the hand size. Voltaic Key will help us later on in the game if we find one of the mana rocks, like Grim Monolith or Basalt Monolith. Ingot Chewer for the Sedris opponent. Betty comes after the Voltaic Key, and he does. We didn't have big plans for it right now, but it would have been nice to have that in play. Unfortunately, this deck is so dedicated to the Mindslaver, Worst Fears, Emrakul combo that there aren't a lot of ways to pull things out of the graveyard with this deck. At some point, I need to actually build a Nicol Bolas deck that isn't this janky combo deck and just play like actual Grixis control. Seems like it'd be a ton of fun. So Yidris' opponent has a Signet out with 3 lands. Doesn't quite have the colors for Yidris yet, so that's good news. So I'm going to play the Sunken Hollow. It'll come into play tapped. We don't have anything else we can do this turn, so we'll pass the turn. Could have played the Demonic Tutor, but I felt like holding it this turn just because I don't really know what we need yet. I kind of want to save it as that silver bullet for later in the game when things start to get a little bit out of control and we need some answers. Or if we have the mana and we're just looking to finish the game with our combo. This deck has to be very diligent about how it plays its tutors because of what it's doing. So everyone has accelerated except us. We do have an Ancient Tomb to catch up on the mana acceleration department. We have a Cluestone, a Darksteel Ingot, and a Simic Signet for our opponents respectively. So Yidris is coming into play. Alright. I think now is the time to start making slaves. We're going to play the Slave to Bolas and steal the Yidris. It'd be cool if we could do it later in the game where we had enough mana open to actually play something and get the Cascade off Yidris. The Yidris opponent may kill everyone at the board before that happens. So we're going to play the Slave to Bolas, steal it, and kill the Yidris.
Slave of Bolas.
So we're going to combat. I'm going to send this Yidris at its owner, because that's what Nicol Bolas would do. He'd kill you with your own commander. So then we sacrifice the Yidris, and he goes back to the command zone for the Yidris opponent. This will slow him down a couple turns before he can recast and try to storm off into whatever craziness he's trying to do. So Grimgrin comes into play tapped. Does not yet have a creature to untap it, but I'm sure that will change over time. Factor Fiction for the Sedris opponent, and we are chosen as the opponent to make the piles. So we have 2 lands, 2 mana artifacts, and a Cathartic Reunion. What to do here? I'm going to arrange the cards this way. I'm going to put the lands separate from the spells, simply because I think this will put the opponent in an interesting position, because depending on how they choose, they might miss some land drops. So I like this. And it worked. The opponent chooses the land and discards the Wayfarer's Bubble, the Rakdos Signet, and the Cathartic Reunion. So opponent was landlocked. They pitched everything else just to catch the lands. That is a waste knot for the Yidris opponent. Probably needs to go. That can cause some big problems once the Wheel of Fortune start hitting. And there's the Wheel of Fortune. Now things are going to get crazy. This kind of sucks because we had a pretty good hand. Definitely wanted to hold on to that Demonic Tutor and that Bribery. Yeah, I really liked our hand, and it is probably about to get a whole lot worse. And so the opponent gets a bazillion Waste Knot triggers. Jesus. And as promised, our hand is now terrible. We have 5 lands, a Gilded Lotus, and an Ambitions cost. Hopefully one of our other opponents drew some sort of effect to get rid of all the zombies that Yidris got off the Waste Knot. Yeah, Wheel of Fortune, it got us. Most of the time, if your opponent's playing Wheel of Fortune, 75% of the time, it is gonna hurt you more than it's gonna help you. Opponent plays a Sprouting Vines, search your library for a basic land card, reveal that card, and put it into your hand, and it has Storm, so we got multiple triggers off that. In some sense, we caught a break that we didn't play the Demonic Tutor, because then we would have ended up just pitching a card that we wanted, but I'd still much prefer it was in our hand. Ugh, Wheel of Fortune. So this Yidris opponent basically had the nuts draw with Waste Knot and Wheel of Fortune in their opening hand. It was a very good thing that we made that Slave of Bolas play on the Yidris. Otherwise, Yidris may have won the game right there with all the mana that he generated off of the Waste Knot. At least if he didn't win the game, he'd probably be so far ahead that I don't know if any of us could catch back up. So another land for us, not really what we wanted. I'm going to get this Gilded Lotus down. I am then going to play the Sunken Ruins, and we're going to play the Ambitions cost. We're going to have to discard the hand size, but we have so many lands that I think it's going to be fine. Yeah, this is definitely a good trade. We have plenty of blue mana, so I'll pitch this island. Opponent gets the Waste Knot trigger. Hopefully they can't do anything with instant speed black mana. So the Ambitions cost, we did catch this Diluvian Primordial, and being that everyone just Wheeled of Fortune, this should be pretty good. Let's take a look at graveyards. So there's a Sleep. That could be useful. Grimgrin appears to be playing Infect. Infect zombies, huh? That's interesting. Or not completely Infect, but he's got a couple Infectors in there, so there's that. Sleep is definitely an interesting card once we need it. We could lock down the zombies with that. What else can we do? We could Factor Fiction. Factor Fiction would get us some additional cards. That seems like a pretty good play. Muddle the Mixture. Wouldn't really do much for us. The Yidris opponent has all kinds of spells. Diabolic Tutor is pretty solid. Incendiary Command if we need to blow stuff up. We could Wheel of Fortune again, although with the Waste Knot out, probably not a great idea. Although, it may not be the worst idea just because our hand is all lands. Sprouting Vines also isn't terrible if we play a whole bunch of spells all at once. So, Grimgrin opponent plays a Possessed Scab. It is a 3/2 with Menace, and when it enters the battlefield, return target instant, sorcery, or creature from your graveyard to your hand. If Possessed Scab would die, exile it. And he chose to return Unbreathing Horde to his hand. So, Grimgrim's coming at us. That's not spectacular. Grimgrin also plays a Graph Harvest. Zombies you control have Menace, and exile a card from your graveyard to create a 2/2 black zombie. So Sedris is playing an Animate Dead. Let's see what he goes for. Goes for a Sepulchral Primordial. That's going to be really good right here. No creatures in our graveyard. So this game has escalated rather quickly. Great Merchant of Asphodel. I go down to 18. Grimgrin is at 31, and the Yidris opponent is down to 26. Sedris is up to 67 life. Let's see what the Yidris opponent has this turn. Yidris opponent plays a 24/24 Consuming Aberration. And assuming it stays in play, it's only going to get bigger. Wonderful. So no attacks with the zombies. Man, this board state is awful. We need a board wipe pretty bad. There's a Diabolic Tutor in there. We go for a Blasphemous Act, except then the Consuming Aberration would still be alive. That could cause problems. Drop our Scalding Tarn, and we're going to go on the Diluvian Primordial plan. We're going to paint ourselves off this Ancient Tomb. I know our life's low, but everything on the board's so big that I'd rather just have the mana to be able to make as many plays as we can. So, Diluvian Primordial. Hopefully the triggers work properly on this. So we're going to choose Sleep, Factor Fiction, and Diabolic Tutor. Hopefully this doesn't get us killed. First thing I'm going to do is cast this Diabolic Tutor, cast the Factor Fiction, and then we'll cast the Sleep. So I'm going to sleep the Sedris opponent because he seems to be the furthest ahead on board state. And I'm hoping the Consuming Aberration will swing into him and bring his life total down a whole bunch. So I choose the Yidris opponent for the Fact or Fiction. Let's see what they give us. Decree of Pain would be nice. Of course, he separates the Decree of Pain from the Ulamog. So now the problem is everyone knows I have a Decree of Pain, unless... Oh, man. This is... I'd like to pitch the Ulamog just because it would recycle all of our other cards, which would be cool. Question is, how do we not die? I'm going to choose pile 1. Hopefully it doesn't get us killed. It might. So Ulamog is going to recycle our graveyard into our library, which is actually pretty good. Increasing Vengeance was good to have in our graveyard, but we're a long ways off from actually being able to cast it, so getting back some of the things like Demonic Tutor and Slave of Bolas and other stuff is actually pretty good. Alright, so Diabolic Tutor. What can we do to stay alive? Choosing to go with the Propaganda here, because that will discourage people from attacking us, and hopefully they'll just go attack each other. That's what we'd really be hoping for. So go over the Badlands and play our Propaganda. And then we discard to hand size. I'm going to pitch the Marsh Flats because we're kind of low on life. And cracking more fetches is not ideal when you're at 15. So I feel like the Propaganda should hopefully steer the Yidris opponent to point all his damage at the Sedris opponent. If for some reason we can survive long enough to cast this Decree of Pain, we will draw a ton of cards. You might be wondering why this Glasses of Urza is in the deck. 1, it's a really old card that I've always wanted to find a use for. And 2, it is good if you're about to cast Mindslaver or Worst Fears on someone to know what they have in their hand. I have thought about running Telepathy in this spot. Really, I'd like to run both, but I do need to tune this deck better. It was kind of hastily thrown together, and I haven't spent a lot of time really refining what to do with it. The Grimgrim's coming at us. He's going to blow up our Primordial. Pays for the Propaganda. We drop down to 7. There is a pretty good chance we don't live to our next turn. I've never played a Sedris deck. They seem fun, though. I've always been a big fan of Reanimator-style decks, and that is definitely Sedris to the extreme. Sedris plays a Sundial of the Infinite, so now all of his unearthed cards do not have to leave at the end of play. So Sedris comes into play. There's a Shieldred in play. I hope that convinces the Yidris opponent to swing that way. Really just don't want to go out of the game because we didn't do all that much. Also, the Sedris opponent being at 67 life with a ton of creatures in play is a pretty big mountain to climb. It won't necessarily gain all that much by killing me right here, because then they probably just die to Sedris in a turn or two after that. So Treasure Cruise for the Yidris opponent. Consuming Aberration triggers. It's going to get a little bigger. We mill a whole bunch of things that we probably wanted. Going to our graveyard is Sift, Nicol Bolas, Temple of Deceit, Grave Titan, and Sol Ring. So Consuming Apparition is currently a 22-22. Combustible Gear Hulk for the Yidris opponent. Consuming Apparition now a 25-25 with this on the stack. So we're going to let him draw because we're at 7 life and we can't afford to take more damage. This is good. This does mean that we will survive to our next turn. And we should be able to draw a whole lot of cards off Decree of Pain. The next step will be trying to find either a Reliquary Tower or a Thought Vessel so that we do not have to discard to hand size. So Shielded trigger, no effect to us. And of course we draw another land. So the only thing to really do is play this Decree of Pain. And it resolves. We are going to draw a lot of cards. Come on, Reliquary Tower. Alright, we have 22 cards in our hand. And someone just disconnected. The Grimgrin opponent has scooped. Okay, let's see what's in our hand. We have a mana drain, that's fun. Animate Dead goes to the graveyard. We did not catch any of our no max hand size cards. It's not spectacular. Unfortunately, if I had left a black mana open, we'd probably be able to make it happen, but we're gonna have to discard to hand size. What to play? So I'm gonna play the Urborg so that way we can tap our Ancient Tomb without taking additional damage. And from here, I'm gonna Demonic Tutor, and I'm just gonna go for one of our finishing cards. I'm gonna grab the Mindslaver because we do have Academy Ruins in hand. So we grab Mindslaver, and now we go to the discard portion of our turn. So now we discard. Waste Not's going to trigger a whole bunch of things. Basically, if it comes into play tapped or costs us life, it's probably not a viable option. That's gone. So we get our Ulamog trigger, and that's going to recycle all of our cards back into our library, which is very good because there are a whole bunch of things in our graveyard that don't really need to be there. The Yidris opponent gets a whole bunch of triggers off Waste Not. They'll draw 2 cards. Yeah, it looks like they're making some zombies, which zombies aren't great. They get 18 mana. That's pretty crazy. They will have to pay to attack us with the zombies, though. So hopefully Propaganda keeps us alive. That was the single best Decree of Pain I've ever played. I've never drawn that many cards off of it. I actually don't even run it in that many of my decks because it's so expensive to cast. I usually just prefer to run Damnation and Toxic Deluge. In that 8 slot, I usually run Ugin because Ugin hits enchantments. I play a lot of artifacts, so Ugin hits everyone else's stuff and leaves some of my artifacts in play. But I have to say that decree was pretty fun. So Sedris' opponent is fabricating. Let's see what he searches out. We did give Yidris 10 cards, and more wheel effects would be very bad for us. We have all the things in our hand that we want in our hand. We really don't want them in the graveyard. So Whip of Erebos for the Sedris opponent. And, oh boy, a Sepulchral Primordial with haste and lifelink. Does he have an Anger in his graveyard or something? Oh, he used the Whip of Erebos to play the... Oh, wow. Yeah, that's pretty good. So uses the Whip of Erebos to get back the Sepulchral Primordial, gets another Sepulchral Primordial, Combustible Gear Hulk coming into play. We will allow him to draw because we have no life. So he's going to swing in at the Yidris opponent. He's going to throw the zombies in front. So we just need to not get wheeled and survive until our turn, and then we can start making Slaves of Bolas. Temple for our opponent. In hindsight, I wish I played the Academy Ruins last turn. That way, if we get wheeled, we could just put the Mindslaver back on top. Hopefully that doesn't come back to bite us. And that's a dark deal. So that was not awesome. We drew into a Worse Fears, so that replaces the Mindslaver. Unfortunately, we can't do the recursion loop with Mindslaver and Academy Ruins, so we do get punished right there for not playing the Academy Ruins. We did catch this time stretch. So right now it looks like the course of action might be to time stretch, play Nicol Bolas, hit with Nicol Bolas, and then use Worse Fears. We made it back to our turn. We are at 7 life. We are definitely going to fire off this time stretch and see what kind of craziness happens there. Ooh, Diabolic Revelation. Even better. Okay, so let's see what kind of mana we have. The opponents may just scoop once all this starts to happen. So time stretch, we have 2 additional turns. We can't do much else in this turn. We'll drop the Temple of Malice. Do we want to concentrate? We'll take a concentrate. So, additional turn number 2, we play Nicol Bolas. Black, black, red, undo, red, black, red, black. So, Nicol Bolas into play.
You all become my slaves.
Going to drop down a Solemn Simulacrum, get another land, and starting turn number 2, additional turn number 2, our 3rd consecutive turn. So we have to pay for Nicol Bolas, so we will do that. And we get a Mirari. Oh man, do we have enough mana to Mirari and Worse Fears? I doubt that we do. So I'm just going to go in at the Yidris opponent with the Nicol Bolas. He may just scoop after he gets hit. And then we'll have to figure out what we're going to do with the Sedris opponent. So discards his entire hand. Let's see what was in it. Grave Upheaval. Definitely don't want that. Spell Twine. Another good card to get rid of. Ancient Excavation. Blasphemous Act. Drastic Revelation. That seems like an interesting card. So yeah, we definitely did some good work there. The next thing to do will be to check our mana. It's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So for this turn, we will just play the Worst Fears. So Worst Fears on the Sedris opponent.
I'm a slave for you.
We're going to steal their turn. He's got a bunch of lands and a Corpse Dance. Return the top creature card of your graveyard to the battlefield. That creature gains haste. Exile it at the beginning of the next end step. So we may do that. Has a Shieldred. I believe the Solemn Simulacrum will be... Ha! So the Sedris opponent scooped because I was taking too long to figure out what to do on his turn.
Slaves of Bolas.
That does happen a lot when you play Worse Fears on people. They do not like that. And especially in multiplayer where, you don't have that face-to-face interaction, they just scoop. So unfortunately now we do have the problem of we have to fend off the Yidris attackers. But fortunately we did discard his hand, so hopefully he didn't top deck anything big. So Yidris coming into play. Not so scary. As long as he doesn't have a way to give it haste, we should be in pretty good shape right here. Oh, Worst Fears. I love Worst Fears. So Yidris' opponent swinging with everything. He will have to pay the propaganda tax. So he decides not to attack after getting a load of the propaganda tax. We have to pay for Nicol Bolas. We get a Brainstorm. That's pretty good. We have 10 mana open if we don't pain ourselves off the Ancient Tomb. 11 if we do pain ourselves. Unfortunately, that's not enough to Diabolic Revelation and Insurrection all on the same turn. I'm going to try this Brainstorm, see if we have anything good coming. Ooh, Confiscate. is good. I'm going to put the Concentrate back on top of our library, as well as the Mirari. I do want to get this land down. That will help us. The other option is Charmbreaker Devils. Stealing Yidris is probably the safest thing to do. So we're going to go to combat, hit with Nicol Bolas, and then steal Yidris with the Confiscate. So Nicol Bolas hits Yidris again. That puts him at 14 commander. He can't take another hit from Nicol Bolas. What did we get on the discard? Anything good? An Ash Baron, so he was just holding up a land. Probably should have just played it. I don't think he played a land last turn, but whatever. So we are going to steal this Yidris. So steal Yidris. This will do two things. This will give us a blocker. It'll also give us an attacker. And if the game goes long enough where we have to attack with Yidris, then all of our stuff gains Cascade. We should probably be able to win from that. And the opponent scoops it up.
You all become my slaves.
So, Slaves of Bolas. We got the Grimgrin opponent to concede after playing a Decree of Pain and drawing up to 22 cards. We got the Sedris opponent to concede after hitting him with the worst fears. And we got the Yidris opponent to concede after playing a Confiscate on the Yidris. So this is the Nicol Bolas deck. This deck is made to be evil. You should absolutely not build this deck. Your friends will hate you. You'll probably get to play it one time, and then they will never ever play with you with that deck again. This only works because I play on Magic Online, and I don't play this deck all that often. Now, I do have to say, we did get pretty lucky in that game. There were plenty of points in time where someone could have just came in and killed us. We were at 15 life and 7 life for the last several turns of the game when there were plenty of threats on board. So, in a sense, our opponents made the wrong choice by letting us live. On the other hand, it was really good for us because we got to see what happens when you leave Nicol Bolas, the evilest of all the Elder Dragons,
The most evil of all the Elder Dragons.
in play. Anyways, that's going to be it for today. Let me know what you guys think of Nicol Bolas. Let me know what you think of mind-slavering other people's turns, and whether you think that should really be allowed in EDH or not. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, feel free to like, comment, or subscribe. Thank you for watching.